Hello and welcome to another edition of A Priest Abroad. Today I would like to address a somewhat tricky question, and one which I'm not going to answer just yet, but I want to examine some of the facts concerning the initial question of, is Charles a pagan? Now, the reason why I thought about doing a video on this is there was a bit of a furore over the invitation cards to the coronation of Charles III and Queen Camilla. Many of you will have seen it. If not, I shall include a picture of it. And what you will notice, first and foremost, is that the green man motif is front and centre. And that was quite an extraordinary thing to have occurred, and it did not go unnoticed. A lot of people commented on it, not least myself. No Christian symbols at all, other than the location, which is Westminster Abbey. And so what was the point of putting a green man, so large, so central, in an invitation card? Was this some sort of message? Now let's look at the evidence about, first, the green man. You will also remember that the invitation card had various foliage and flowers, spring flowers and bumblebees and strawberries and all sorts of things to do with spring. Now, of course, that may just have been indicative of the date, but we'll talk about that shortly. But the first thing to address is this green man. Now, the green man is a very universal motif, certainly within the West, and particularly in Europe, continental Europe and this country, because we can see the green man in a number of our medieval churches and cathedrals. I mean, some of them have an extraordinary amount. I think Norwich is one. But certainly he does appear in churches. The green man is also the name of many pubs you will have noticed in this country. The green man is practically everywhere. When I was growing up, I don't know if it still exists, there used to be sort of tinned food. I think it was tinned peas or something or other. I can't remember what it was. And it was called the Jolly Green Giant, which was a similar thing. People have also said that Robin Hood, in a sense, was an archetype of the green man. Now, I have to take you back to 1939, when the term green man was introduced into this country. The motif of what became known as the green man, of course, has existed for hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. I mean, some cite it as far back as early Babylonia. But certainly the green man, as he has been coined, existed in continental Europe long before Christianity came to this country. And therefore, there's no reason not to believe he wasn't in this country before the Christian church had arrived. So the green man per se predates Christianity. Now, the green man name apparently wasn't coined until 1939, when one Lady Raglan, who used to write for folklore monthlies, introduced a periodical into said monthly where she coins the phrase, the green man. And when she mentions the green man, she's talking about what had previously been known as the foliate head. Those are how they were described, these masks with acorns and leaves growing out of what looks like a human sort of face. It's never been considered a god as such, but certainly tied very much to springtime and May Day. So that's your green man. Now, some people have said, well, it's a Christian symbol, so why shouldn't it be on the invitation cards? Well, clearly, it is a pagan symbol. The fact that it appears in medieval churches doesn't make it any less pagan, nor does it Christianize the green man as such, although there is a history, of course, within Christianity of Christianizing pagan sites and putting churches on them and adopting pagan festivals and making them major Christian feasts. And so he was sort of rehabituated, in a sense, by being allowed to go into churches. And in fact, I wondered at first whether the reason why the Green Man was on the invitation to Westminster Abbey was because there are two Green Men at Westminster Abbey. One is in the, I think, the choir screen in the centre, of which I shall post a picture. And the second one is upon a choir seat called a Misericordiae, which was when the old canons, the singers, priest singers of the Abbey Church, were feeling a bit tired, and they could perch their sacred bottoms upon a little ledge. And they were called Misericordia after having mercy, after the Latin word to have mercy. So they could get a little bit of a reprieve for standing so long during the long monastic offices. And one of those has a Green Man too carved in it, which you can see here. So he does appear in Westminster Abbey, but the Green Man that's on the invitation card looks nothing like the Green Man on the Misericordia or the choir screen. So a generic one has been used. So it's clearly quite important. Now let's look at other facts surrounding Prince Charles. We all know that he went to a place called Highgrove. He was looking for somewhere to go and live. Now, Highgrove, which could also be known as Sacred Grove, all sacred groves were pagan in essence. Sacred Grove, Highgrove, you might say, well, that's not entirely the same etymology, but let's examine it further. If you look at the location of Highgrove, it is exactly aligned with the what they call the Mary-Michael line, which runs really from Cornwall right up to Suffolk, and it follows a particular line. And when you look at an avenue of trees, probably left over from the Sacred Grove, they align perfectly with the front door of Highgrove. And this line, of course, is where the Mary-Michael line is where the sun comes up directly along that line at the intersection of the spring equinox and the summer solstice. And in fact, that's what gives us the original May Day. And so when this avenue of trees goes up to the front door of Highgrove, the sun exactly rises there. Now that again could be just pure coincidence, but it's noticeable in other pagan sites like Stonehenge. It is entirely aligned with the sun coming up. Could be pure coincidence. I mean, his story was that, he needed somewhere that was equidistant between all his estates and he could nip to London. Others say, well, it's because he used to hunt with the Duke of Beaufort's hounds. Other people say, well, he was to be near Camilla, because she sort of lived round there. So there are a number of reasons why he might have wanted to be there. And the name Highgrove, Sacred Grove, the fact that it aligns with the St. Mary-Michael line, is neither here nor there. But it's an interesting fact to observe. And of course, the third thing is the date of the coronation. Now, the dissection of the spring equinox and the summer solstice, which gives you the position of the sun as it rises, is always on May the 6th. And depending on how fast the Earth is spinning, can be May the 5th. That's the original day. That would have been the day when people in pre-Christian times would have recognised their feast day in May, their spring festival. That's when they would have got up to all their shenanigans. But of course we've sort of shunted it to the side and earlier on May the 1st. So all the pagans who celebrate May the 1st are actually out by a few days, and any red communists that celebrate May the 1st also are out. That's not actually the correct May Day. But the coronation, which happened yesterday, did align perfectly with the real May Day. Now again, when it comes to the date, people say, yes, well, that's because it was the anniversary of Camilla's children. Oh, this is the anniversary of the birth of somebody, all the other. And there was all sorts of various anniversaries brought up. So is all of this sufficient to make Charles a pagan? Well, I don't think it is. Yes, he has lived at Highgrove, but I think that was more to be near Camilla. He said it was near to be equidistant between his estates and that he could nip back to London. There's clear reasons why he might have wanted to live there than elsewhere. The date was probably chosen to give sufficient time to mourn the death of Queen Elizabeth II. And the Green Man probably ties in more with his love of nature, his love of sustainability, his concerns about the climate, possibly. He has a great belief in sacred geometry and mathematics, and the aesthetics of buildings and landscaping. And so he's very invested in nature. He's a nature lover. I wouldn't quite say he's a pantheist, but he does have a love of the outdoors. And with the rejuvenation of springtime, it might have appeared a simple motif that he wished to express, to encapsulate new birth, a new spring, if you like, within the nation and in the life of the nation. So is all of this enough to make him a pagan? I suspect not. And then we have to look at other things too. Is he a Christian then? Well, we all know that his grandmother was an Orthodox nun, would you believe? And we all know that his father was a baptised Orthodox Christian, but of course had to change church. He had to jump ship in order to marry Queen Elizabeth, so it became Church of England. And we also know that he likes to go and visit Mount Athos. Now, those of you who don't know what Mount Athos is, it's basically an island which is a complete monastery. Well, there are numerous monasteries and skeets within this island, but the whole island is considered a male monastery. And it's under the protection of the Theotokos, the Mother of God. And Charles likes to go and visit there quite a lot. Now, you might say, well, that might have been part of a state visit to Greece. But in 2003, he visited 3 times in 1 year, Mount Athos. I don't think any state visits a small island in the Aegean Sea on 3 occasions. So, mother's Orthodox, father's Orthodox. He goes to the Orthodox monasteries of Mount Athos. Is that enough to make him a Christian? Not on its own, but I think it's worth mentioning. And then, of course, we look at the coronation itself, and there have been various opinions about it, most of them positive. I don't know about you, but I sat there quite riveted to the spot and watched the whole thing, and I enjoyed it, and I liked it, and I thought it was good. Not everybody did. Some people have criticised Archbishop Welby, people who don't particularly like him. I don't particularly like him as an individual or as a church leader, but I have to give credit where credit was due. He did quite a commendable job. I mean, you can imagine the nerves that must have abounded yesterday, but he was, he wasn't fazed at all. He went through the service and he was solid, confident, and I thought his sermon was okay too, because he brought out Christian themes. It's not easy to preach at things like coronations, I wouldn't imagine, without upsetting at least some people. So I thought he did a creditable job there. And of course, other people have been criticising the fact that, particularly Catholics, that he took a Protestant oath. Protestant king in what is now a Protestant church, in the middle of a Protestant service conducted by Protestant clergy, shouldn't come much of a surprise that he made a Protestant oath, being the supreme governor of the Church of England, which is a Protestant church. Bit of a no-brainer, chaps. But a number of Catholics are all very exercised about this and thought it was terrible, which is slightly bonkers, really. And for the first time in history, there were Catholic hierarchy present at the service, not only present at the service, but actually said a prayer. There was the Cardinal Archbishop of Westminster. And not just that, there was the head of the Greek Orthodox Church who said a prayer. And not only that, during the service, the Greek Orthodox choir sang. So yes, there was a Protestant oath, but other people were included to a level which they hadn't previously been. So I took positives from that. So I actually enjoyed the coronation. I was actually quite moved as he came back out during the recession to the doors of the abbey, right at the end, sporting his his crown and one thing and another. I forget what the anthem was that was being played at the time, but I just felt myself terribly moved, and I thought he came across as magnificent in a sense. I mean, he didn't smile like an imbecile, which is what one is always tempted to do with these sort of situations through nerves. He remained dignified throughout. And then even as he had to disrobe, almost be stripped before his being anointed and redressed, I thought it was a remarkable sort of act of humility which he has to undergo. And so the whole thing passed off with a great aplomb, I thought. And I'm very proud to be a monarchist. I'm very proud to be a supporter of Charles III. And I hope you liked it. This doesn't answer the question, of course, is Charles a pagan? Well, I suspect he's not. Is he a Christian? I suspect he's not in the Orthodox sense of the word. And I don't mean Russian Orthodox or Greek Orthodox. I mean in the sense that he is overt in his Christianity. But we never know what goes on in private lives behind closed doors. None of us have a window into other people's souls. I suspect he's more Christian than we give him credit for. But he has to be not only the supreme head of the Church of England, he also has to be a sovereign to people of many faiths and many denominations, including Catholics, in which this ceremony was given over to a certain amount of generosity towards others, which I thought was also a positive. So I come away with no alarm bells ringing. I wish them both well. I enjoyed the coronation. It was a magnificent event to have witnessed. It will have gone out to the whole world. And it was literally regal. And so I will leave it with you to answer the question. Perhaps some of you might want to say something in the comments. Now, before I disappear today, I'm going to give you some updates on the renovations on my home and show you the pictures of the now erected wall. So do come outside with me and have a little look. These are the new walls and the new pillars. They're rather fun. Excuse these pallets. They're there to stop the cows jumping in. And excuse the bins too. They're to stop the cows coming in. And there's the pillarage. Quite extraordinary. Where the new copings have gone down, I've put basically some plastic sheeting down in order to allow the mortar to dry off. But there we go. You've seen it. You've seen my new erections, all four of them, looking rather marvellous. I wanted to say also, which I forgot in the original preamble, to the question, is Charles a pagan, and how wonderful the coronation was, just how tremendous that young lad was. I think he was called Stuart Strackland. Do you remember that sort of page boy? Well, he's the most long-standing member, that lad, of the Chapel Royal as a chorister. And he was given the enviable task, some might say unenviable. I thought he did magnificently, this little page boy, and he went before the king and he greeted them. And he said something like, as a member of the children of God, I welcome you in the name of the King of Kings, something of that order. And did it with such aplomb, no notes, no anything. It was rather magnificent. And so, as I say, a tremendous coronation day. Well, I hope you enjoyed looking at my my wall outside. I'm very pleased with it. Certainly makes a difference. it solidifies the property a little bit. And we've got cows that wander about here, munch everything. And they like to munch everything in the front garden too. So it should keep the cows at bay. But thank you for joining me. It's been splendid having you on board. If you'd like to subscribe and feel moved to do so, please do. It'd be good to have you on board. And I'll see you again on the next video, God willing.